Picture this. You're driving along a deserted highway, the headlights barely cutting through the thick fog that seems to creep in closer with every mile. Suddenly, your car breaks down and you're forced to pull over. There's no one in sight, no other cars around. You're stranded, but little do you know, you're not as alone as you think. Welcome back to Creepster, where we dive into the darkest corners of the unknown. Tonight, we'll be exploring the top 5 scary roadside breakdown stories. True tales of terror that unfolded when people found themselves stranded in the most unsettling places. Make sure to grab a blanket and keep your doors locked as we take a ride down these terrifying roads. Our first story takes us to a lonely stretch of highway in rural Texas. A woman, tired from a long day of driving, was heading home on the quiet road when her car began to sputter. A breakdown, with no sign of civilization for miles. She tried calling for help, but her phone had no signal. She was stranded, and panic began to set in. After a few minutes, a figure appeared on the side of the road, an eerie, ragged man holding his thumb out for a ride. He wore tattered clothes, his face hidden in shadow. Desperate, the woman unlocked the door and reluctantly let him in. The man didn't speak a word as she drove down the road. The silence was suffocating. When they reached the nearest town, she turned to thank him, but the seat beside her was empty. There was no trace of him. He had vanished without a sound. The local police later informed her that a man matching his description had died in a car crash at that exact spot years ago. Next, we head to the mountains of Oregon. A young man had been driving back from a weekend trip when his car overheated, leaving him stranded on a dark, winding road. As he sat waiting for help, a tow truck pulled up beside him. The driver, a grizzled man with a thick beard, stepped out and assured him he could help. He asked the man to hop in, explaining he would take him to the nearest mechanic. But as soon as the young man climbed into the truck, the driver didn't say a word. No conversation, no explanation, they just drove. The road stretched on for miles without a single sign of civilization. After what felt like hours, the young man suddenly noticed something strange. Every building he passed looked abandoned. Every street they turned onto was completely deserted. When he finally spoke up and asked where they were going, the driver didn't answer. He only glanced at the rearview mirror with a chilling smile. And then in an instant the truck disappeared, vanishing into the night without a trace. Our third story comes from a woman driving through the Nevada desert. Her car broke down late at night, and after hours of waiting, she spotted a gas station in the distance. She drove towards it, hoping to find help. The station was eerily empty, but the lights were on and the pumps were running. As she stepped out, a man appeared behind the counter wearing a faded, stained uniform. He offered to help her, but when she asked about the nearest mechanic, he gave her a strange smile and said, "There's no need for a mechanic. You'll be fine here." The woman hesitated but stayed. As the night wore on, she realized something was off. The gas station felt like it was stuck in time. Everything was too still, too perfect. When she went to leave, the road in front of the station had disappeared, replaced by a thick fog. No exits, no other way out. In a panic, she turned back to the gas station, but it was gone. All that remained was an empty desert, stretching endlessly in every direction. No gas station, no man, just darkness. One man driving down a desolate road in the middle of the night found himself pulled over by a vehicle flashing its headlights. His car was fine, but curiosity got the better of him, and he pulled over. A figure stepped out from the other vehicle. An old woman, her face hidden by a hood. She asked if he needed assistance, and though he hesitated, he replied that he was fine. Before he could drive off, she pointed down the road, saying, "Keep going straight. Don't look back." As he continued driving, an overwhelming feeling of dread washed over him. He felt like someone was watching him, but when he glanced in the rearview mirror, no car was behind him. Then he heard the unmistakable sound of a car revving up behind him. Turning the corner, he looked back, only to find no one was there. The road was empty. In that moment, he realized the old woman had never been real. She was a warning, and he'd narrowly escaped a terrifying fate. Our final story is the most terrifying of all. A tale from a man who was driving through a stormy night on an isolated stretch of highway in the Midwest. His car stalled in the middle of nowhere. After attempting to restart it, he noticed a figure approaching from the darkness. A man, pale and sickly, his movements jerky and unnatural. The stranger reached the man's car and tried to offer help, but there was something off about his appearance. His eyes were hollow, his smile twisted into something grotesque. Terrified, the driver refused, but the man insisted, forcing the door open. As the man entered, the temperature dropped drastically. He began to speak in an unnatural voice, telling the driver that he had been waiting for him. Then the man's features began to distort, his skin ripping apart like something monstrous was trying to break free. The driver, heart pounding, slammed the car into drive and sped away. But when he glanced back, there was nothing, no figure, no trace of anyone. Five terrifying tales of roadside breakdowns, where the only thing more unsettling than the breakdown itself was what happened after. So, the next time your car sputters and dies in the middle of nowhere, remember, sometimes it's not just your vehicle that's broken. Thank you for joining us on this chilling ride down the darkest roads. If you enjoyed these eerie tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to never miss a terrifying episode. And remember, wherever you are, be careful when you break down, because some roads are better left unexplored.